Yekaterina the First Alexeyevna, or in English, Catherine the First, born as Marta Helena Skowronska or Marta Samuilovna Skowronskaya, the Russian form, was born in April 1684 and died in May 1727, so aged 43 years. She was the second wife of Peter the Great and Empress of Russia from February 1725 until her death in May 1727. She was born in Jakobstadt, Semigallia, Duchy of Courland and Semigallia in the modern Latvia. She died in Tsarskoye Selo, or the Tsar's village, St. Petersburg in the Russian Empire. Her mother is named in at least one source as Elizabeth Moritz, the daughter of a Baltic German woman. And her father was a Roman Catholic peasant from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Marta's parents died of the plague around 1689. She was raised by Mr. Johann Ernst Glück, a Lutheran pastor and educator who was the first to translate the Bible into Latvian. In his household, she served as a lowly servant, likely either as a scullery maid or washerwoman. Unfortunately, not even the pastor made any effort to teach her to read and write. Indeed, even later in life, she remained illiterate. And she then officially or nominally became a Lutheran. At the age of 17, she was married off to a Swedish dragoon, or a cavalryman, or rather an infantryman fighting on horseback, Johann Kruse, or Johann Rabbe, with whom she remained for 8 days in 1702. Then he had to withdraw with the Swedish troops from Marienburg. When Russian forces captured the town, Pastor Gluck offered to work as a translator, and Field Marshal Boris Sheremetyev agreed to his proposal and took him to Moscow. She eventually became part of the household of Prince Alexander Menshikov, who was the best friend of Peter the Great of Russia. And then she was introduced to the Tsar. In 1704, she was well established in the Tsar's household as his mistress and gave birth to a son, Peter. In 1705, she converted to Orthodoxy and took the name of Yekaterina Alexeyevna. They were secretly married between, Catherine and Peter were probably secretly married between October and December 1707. They had 12 children, 2 of whom survived into adulthood. Anna, born in 1708, who would serve also as an empress of Russia, and then Yelizaveta, or Elizabeth, born in 1709. And she too served as an empress, if I remember correctly. Catherine went with Peter on his Prut campaign in 1711. In 1724, Catherine was officially crowned and named co-ruler. Catherine represented the interests of the new men, commoners, in other words, non-aristocrats by birth, who had been brought to positions of great power by Peter based on competence. A change of government was likely to favor the entrenched aristocrats. For that reason, during a meeting of a council to decide on a successor, a coup was arranged by Menshikov and others, where the Guards regiments with whom Catherine was very popular proclaimed her the ruler of Russia, giving her the title of Empress. The real power, however, lay with Menshikov, Peter Tolstoy, and with other members of the Supreme Privy Council. She only survived her famous husband by 2 years, succumbing to tuberculosis at the age of 43 in St. Petersburg. She was the first woman to rule Imperial Russia, opening the legal path for a century almost entirely dominated by women, including her daughter Elizabeth and granddaughter-in-law Catherine the Great, all of whom continued Peter the Great's policies to modernize Russia. At the time of Peter's death, the Russian army, composed of 130,000 men and supplemented by another 100,000 Cossacks, was easily Europe's largest one. However, the military expenses consumed about 65% or nearly 2/3 of the government's annual revenue. Since Russia was at last peaceful, was not fighting any wars officially, Catherine I was determined to reduce military expenditure. For most of her short reign, she was controlled by her advisors. However, on this single issue, she was able to have her way. She also gave her name to Kadriorg Park and the later neighborhood of Tallinn, Estonia, which today houses Estonia's presidential palace. In general, Catherine seems to have ruled reasonably and cautiously. The story of her humble origins was considered by later generations of Tsars to be a state secret.